This is Damian Macy, and it is on Wednesday, September the 23rd of 2015. I'm with the Friends of the Marshall Library on our oral history project. And today I have Paula Ross with me. She is not a native of Marshall, but has been very active in the community and been here a number of years. So I think right now she probably calls it home. And with that, Paula, I'll introduce you and kind of tell us where you started out and maybe a little bit about your early family.
Okay, I started out in Ohio, Illinois, is where my home was when I was born. And there was no hospital there, so I was born in Princeton, Illinois, at Perry Memorial Hospital. And then taken home to Ohio, which was about a population of 500 and something, and has not grown over the years. That's just how big it was. And amazingly enough, they still have their own high school and their own grade school, which,
Surprising.
as an educator, that's good in some ways, maybe good for the community, but not really good for the students. So I went home, and I went home to two sisters. My sister Sylvia was 7 years older than I was, and my sister Barbara was 20 months older than I was. And this was in 1944, so it wasn't a time when people were really exciting about taking on more expense. So I think I was one of the surprises of the world. So, but my father was, at that time, he owned a gamble store in Ohio, Illinois, which, with the population of 550, that went by the way not very long after. And so when I was 6 years old, I moved to the farm. And we farmed with his brother and lived on a farm that was about a quarter of a mile from them. And he was, I guess he was Uncle Evan's hired help, because they paid us whatever and a salary, and then we got a hog and all those things. So, but I did grow up on the farm. That's what I claim to be as a farm girl. And we were there until probably I was 16 years old. And then he had to find another way to be employed. And because it wasn't going to get people through college or even keep up with three girls. So that was what happened. But the farm was a big part of my life. I was the third girl, and therefore I was my father's boy. I was always outside with him. I wasn't excited about being inside. The summers.
Did you have some chores and all that you had to do and leading to farm life?
Yes, we did. We had chickens. That was one of our side projects. We got 500 roosters in the spring and then grew them to a certain size. And then we butchered them, and my mother cleaned them, and we sold them. And then we had laying hens also. I wasn't much involved with those. I did not like the chickens at all. I mean, I was not thrilled about my duties, but every morning I was the one that had to go out and feed them, and I fed them in the afternoon and took care of them. And then one of the most exciting things was when we could get a rooster to be 3 pounds, because nobody would let us boil the water and cut their head off until they got to that size.
Did you have an egg gathering routine also?
I did not gather the eggs. I think they thought I might be more destructive than helpful in that area, because I was younger. I was, I stayed there, between 6 and 16. And I don't think the last few years we did chickens. I don't remember that. I remember all of us being there when we did that.
Did you have some other livestock like cows and hogs?
We had cows and we had hogs, and my father farmed, and we learned to drive there. I learned on a Ford tractor. And he made us back into the barn with a wagon on behind. And that was the big test, and that barn didn't do very well. because we would hit it. But we used a manure spreader, so it wasn't a high wagon we had to back with. It was narrower. But I remember when he was teaching us to back up, we had to figure out what the turning the wheel one way and the back end of my wagon would go the other way. And we mowed lawns. We mowed our lawn, which I did most of that. My sister Barbara, who was 20 months older, she was more of an inside person. She didn't want to feed the chickens. And so she got to make our lunches for school.
Mentioning school, did you go to a country school or were you in town?
We went to town. The Ohio schools were there then. And in the beginning of my school, there were 2 grades per class. First and second were together. We didn't have kindergarten. Didn't have a cafeteria. But we had, but we did have 2 grades together. And I spent a lot of time at the back table doing math papers because I got everything done. I was quick about it. Not very careful, but quick. And so I learned a lot of my math just by going through books by myself. And that was one of my favorite subjects. Math. Yeah.
So by having the 2 classes in one room, maybe if you were in the younger class, were you able to pick up some things maybe that was going on and learn from the advanced class?
I don't think so, because I probably was reading some. And I already had my math in my head. And my mother was very strict about murdering the King's English, as she called it. We weren't going to do that. So that was part of it. But anyway, I probably did, but I don't remember that I picked up things from their class. I just was always doing something and visiting with neighbors if I could. And then in 3rd grade, we were separated. We went to, I was in 3rd grade with one teacher in 4th grade, and from then on out, it was just one.
Did you have, maybe through high school also, did you have a favorite subject? You mentioned liking math.
Math was my favorite subject, probably, to work on. I was in music from the very beginning, but that was something that we were kind of born knowing. My mother was a vocalist, and my dad's family was musical also. He had 4 brothers, and they sang in a quartet together. And he had 3 brothers that sang in a quartet with him. So music was just an expected. We just did it all the time. It was something we thought was in everybody's home, but not exactly. So it was, and very much our life was centered around the church. That if the doors were open, we had to be there. My grandfather was a Methodist minister. I didn't know him. He died quite young. I don't know how old he was, but they came to Ohio with him being the minister in the church, of the Methodist church. So that's how they got there.
Did your mother play piano, or was she involved in music at all? Or?
Well, she played one song, Country Gardens. That's the only one she could play. Country Gardens was the name of it. She could play it from memory. But she wasn't a pianist, she was a vocalist. She directed the choir at the Methodist church. And in my memory, she was the only one that did. But that might not have been the truth either, because I was young. My Aunt Edna was there at times, and she might have been the director. That was my mother's sister, who was 18 years older than Mother. But she did play, which was really hard for my family to accept. She played the organ at the Catholic Church as an employee. But she always took the dog with her. And so whenever we were there, or she was there, the dog laid on the top step of the Catholic Church until she came out, and then he took her home. So anyway, but music's always been part of my life, and my mother was a musician, and so was my father. He didn't play piano or any instrument. He was the basketball. He was the athletic type. He didn't participate in many school athletics, but they had there was a basketball court in the haymow, that one of those two places that we lived. So he had played basketball.
Did your dad sing in the choir then at all?
Yeah, he was a true tenor, one that had the sound, and he could read music. And Uncle Evan sang bass. Uncle Bill was a baritone, but he was a carpenter, and he lived 7 miles away, and his wife was Missouri Synod Lutheran, and so he joined her church when he married her. And so that was, he wasn't connected with our church anymore. So, but we were all involved in the music and in the church work, and anything that happened there musically usually included somebody in the family.
In entering high school, then that was in your hometown. Then you said
That was there
still
too. We still had the high school. There were, at that time, I remember the number 94 in the high school. There was 16 people in my class. So that wasn't very many.
Have you had a reunion recently that you've attended?
I attended a group reunion of like 3 years because my sister, who was 20 months older, she was involved and in charge, and she wanted us to come, so we went to that. But nobody else from my class was there. There's 2 girls that could have been there that, are still living. Several have passed away. I would say we're at least down to 10, because I know one of them passed away the year after we graduated. So it's been, but it was, I went back, and of course you were friends with everybody in the high school.
Small school.
It was a small school. We knew everybody. I was in band and chorus and mixed chorus, and I sang in a small group, a trio that we traveled everywhere. And
What instrument did you play in band?
Clarinet.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, you've heard of those. And band was okay, but it wasn't my passion. When I walked out of high school, I left it there on the shelf. I wasn't going to go to college, and my sisters were both comprehensive music majors, and I didn't want to do that. I started out as a voice major and a math minor, but then changed my math minor to psychology because math was kind of hard to keep up with when you went on tour. You'd go away and they'd come back, they'd be talking about something else. So it was kind of... And I went in and I dropped the course with a B, and he says, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because I'm going to be gone next week." And I don't think I know where I am right now with these. They were doing the different bases. Instead of 10, we're supposed to know another one. And I said, I think I need to be here to find out. I don't think I can do it on my own. So I just dropped it and changed to psychology.
In high school, what was your favorite subject then?
Math.
Math.
Even more than music. Because I was kind of... music was more unexpected, but it was expected of everybody in the high school. And I loved the chorus. And I liked band. We had a lot of fun in band. I didn't like marching. Clarinet, but I did like the band part of it that much because my friends were there.
Did you have a teacher that maybe helped to direct you or encourage you to be a teacher? My math teacher was probably my favorite teacher in high school. And we were a group of people in my class that we were the first class to do 4 years of math. And when we got to the senior year, he just kind of looked at us like, I've never taught this. And he was, probably in his 30s, late 30s. And he said, so we're just going to do this together. So we did solid geometry the first semester, and we did trigonometry the second semester. And I wouldn't say that I know either of those subjects well, but we tried really hard to figure it out together. But I was in there, and there was another girl, and then there were 3 boys in there and since there were only 4 boys in my class, it was a place where the odds were, a little better. But math was my favorite subject. And no one encouraged me to be a teacher. My sisters both went to Illinois State.
And it was kind of, I think I just went there because they did, and moved with my sister as a freshman in an off-campus house.
So you went to Illinois State?
Illinois State. Since I live here, I call that the real ISU. I did that to Dale McConkey. I says, because I really thought when we went to our first dinner that they were talking about my ISU. And then I figured it out and I says,
Whoops.
"You're not talking about the real ISU, are you?" And Dale just looks at me like,
What are you talking about?
So that's kind of where, our relationship started early when I came here, being a friend of Dale's. So.
And I'm not trying to talk about age or anything, but what year was it that you graduated from the real ISU?
The real ISU, I graduated in 66.
Okay.
At least I think I did, yes. 1966. And it was, for my parents, that was a really big accomplishment.
Sure.
Because that we all three were able to go to college. My father didn't have that opportunity, and my mother, who told us about it a lot, she was the one in her family that didn't get to go. One of the ones, because of the Depression. But she had 3 older sisters that went to Wheaton. So she made sure that we knew that she could have gone, and she could have, but she had to work and try and put some food on the table and those kind of things. That's what happened in those days.
Do you have some particularly memorable memories of those college years?
I really enjoyed my job. I worked at the University Union.
Oh.
And I was in food service mainly, but I think that I made a lot of friends there that were outside the music department. And I was a good employee. I try to do my best at whatever I do. I think being a perfectionist might fall in there. But that was my family there. I was really close to the people I worked with. I had a boss that was really quite demanding. And my sister had him also as a boss in the same kind of situation, the oldest one. And she said he had just started then, and he was, like when they were cashiers, if they didn't straighten the money as they put it in, he let them know about it. And she told me he had to have mellowed a lot because I would go in after work and sit and talk with this person. And she said he was just, 7 years before that, he was just mean. I said, well, he was mean to me. And she says, I know. But anyway, I worked at the union, and then we served banquets for different events. And that was fun. And we had a really good president of the university at that time. His name was Dr. Bone. And he made a point
B-O-N-E?
made a point of being involved with the students, especially the people that were being seen by the public. And so I got to know him personally because I was on staff in I was always on staff. I would work anytime I could because I felt that would be my money.
What was the size of the university at that time?
I am not sure. It wasn't nearly as big as it is now.
Sure not.
But it was, not, it seemed awfully big to me. Because there were, when you come from a town with 16 in your class, and thinking about filling out the registration forms. And
Wow.
I mean, it was really overwhelming. And my parents, one of the things they did do for me, or thought they did, was that they didn't want me to work as a freshman. Though my sister, their deal for her was that she had to live in the dorm at least 1 year. But by the time it got to me, that wasn't possible. I mean, I had to do it a different way. So they said that they would, I didn't need to work and try and help. Well, I'd worked all my life. And I was lost. I mean, too much time on my hands. I didn't have classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays except for 2 choirs, because everything was on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that I had. And so it made me kind of like, I learned to sleep in and all the things that you do. But it was, it was a good time, but I didn't feel like I was busy enough. So the next semester, I didn't tell anybody. I went and got a job at the union, and I made, the first job there was, I'd go in at 4 o'clock in the morning and I made donuts in the union part of it. And that was my job. And it really helped me get myself so I was more scheduled, because I'd have to go to bed at night because I was going to get up.
Got you kind of regimented then to
Yes, and because I was used to having to go, I'd go to school in the morning, I went to work at noon, and then I'd go back to school, and then, I'd study and I'd go to ball games.
Were you living on campus?
No, I lived off campus. But it wasn't far off campus. I was only 2 blocks from the University Union, but it was a dive. It was really less than a fun place to live. It didn't have those nice clean restrooms, and we had to do all that. There were 16 of us in the house. But it was the same house that my oldest sister had lived in, so I was familiar with it. I knew the situation, I knew what it was going to be like. And by the time I got there, they had washers and dryers in the basement, coin ones. But the kitchen was, it was up to the girls to keep it clean, and many of them didn't have a clue. So we just had to be taken care of. But it was I liked who I lived with. I had a wonderful freshman roommate. Well, I didn't have a roommate. I was with Barbara the first year, but there was another freshman girl in the house, and we're still close. We're more like sisters than...
You mentioned Mother and Dad apparently were not in tune with this. Were they upset when they found out you'd been working, or did you keep that from them for a while?
I did. Well, they didn't know they probably didn't know until I took a job my sophomore year.
Oh, okay.
A different one. But I told them over the summer that I wasn't used to not working. I'd had chores all my life. We kept the house clean. We did all those things. And then you go to college and you have this one little room to keep clean. And you're supposed to study. And I had never really, high school was not too much of a challenge as far as studying was concerned. So.
Well, back in those, farm years and then even up through college, did you have some hobbies or things that you maybe even kept up to date to this time?
I read a lot, did a lot of reading, and I just like to be outside. I had dogs all my life that were my friends, and we took long walks and just did things together. But the main hobby was reading and riding our bicycles and roller skating, played tennis. I played tennis against the house a lot and just did anything we could to entertain ourselves. Played games.
Did you have any other pet beside the dog?
No. Well, we had cats, but we didn't like them. They were wild, mainly. Our cats were barn cats, and they were, pretty dangerous when they were having kittens, but they kept the mouse population down, so that was good. But to this day, I prefer dogs. I do too. We have cats at our house because our neighbors have cats, but they come and they sleep on our deck and are around.
Do you have a pet today?
We had dogs. When I married Russ, he'd never been able to have a pet. So I think it maybe was, probably the second year we were married, we got a mutt that was partially collie, but she's beautiful. She looked like a small collie. And so he got that experience, and then we've had 3 altogether, and lost the last one a couple years ago, and he thinks maybe that it might be all right to do again.
You're working on softening them up, aren't you?
I worked at, and then sometimes I really get sensible and I think about the responsibility, and there's a lot of things that have to happen if we're going to have another pet, because we need a fence and we need somebody to take care of it when we're gone. I won't board a pet again.
With traveling, it's difficult.
Yeah, when you travel and I want to go. I don't want to have to be home to take care of my dog, so.
Going through those college years, and what year did you graduate then, Paula?
I graduated in '66.
That was from high school or?
No, '62 in high school.
Oh, okay.
Got me wrong there, didn't I? I think you asked about college, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I graduated in '66 from college,
okay.
and I got a job at Western Community Unit in Buda, Illinois, teaching music.
Where?
Buda. It's,
Okay.
well, it's, if you know where Princeton is, okay, it's west of there, north of Peoria, up in that little town.
Okay.
And it was a consolidated district. Sheffield was another
Okay.
town in there, and those two were together. And it had become Western Community Unit. When I was in high school, there was a Buda school and a Sheffield school, and they were in our conference.
Okay.
So they were, so I knew of the schools, and I lived at home my first year with my parents and drove, which was probably a half hour. And I had two schools. I think I taught K through 12. No, I didn't do kindergarten. I taught 1 through 12 music. So I had two schools of K through 6. I guess I did teach kindergarten. Either that or they didn't have it. I don't remember that. Anyway, I had 2 elementary schools, 2 junior highs, 1 junior high, and 1 high school.
So that was vocal music that
Vocal
you were
music.
teaching?
I had close to 600, 700 students.
Oh. Quite a few.
So it was a lot. It was a lot. It was quite overwhelming
I think so.
because in my mind, I wasn't prepared enough. And it was a little scary.
I would think so, right out of
Right out of college
training
into that,
and go
that
into
big.
that
And
kind of an
so,
environment.
and I taught there 1 year, and then I decided I didn't want to do that after 4 years. That was really popular. And I took a year off, and I went to Florida, and I was with my aunt for a year, and I worked down there in a dentist's office and did some things. But they didn't hire anybody for that job while I was gone, because I guess they thought I'd need money eventually. So when I came back, I went back to the same school and taught there again. So, and I was there for, I don't know, till I married Russ, which was in '70. Doesn't seem like very long, does it? But it's.
How did you happen to meet that young man?
Well, the coach at my school and my principal and friend, and the coach at his school thought we should get together. And the coach at his school knew of me because I had a sister that had taught there, that she started teaching there. So they thought that'd be a good hookup or match, and so they decided we'd have a blind date in 1970. And we did. So
It worked.
It worked. It worked in 45 years later? Or is it 44 years? Something, it might be 40. I can't
I think
subtract.
it's 45, I believe.
45 years we've been together, and I think it's going to work.
Had a good test.
We've had a good test. We've had a good life together.
Well, you mentioned going from the college environment to teaching music, but yet you had quite a math background back there, it sounds like.
Right.
Did you teach any math at all?
No, because, I changed my major after
Mentioned
probably my sophomore year of college and went to psychology.
psychology.
So I did psychology, that's how I finished. My minor's in psychology, and I did the extremes. I did the gifted and the mentally challenged, thinking that maybe in the future there would be a place for music therapy, which could have been a career. But then it didn't come about, because when I got in teaching, things just kind of worked that it'd be better to stay in the teaching area. And then when I got married, I did not teach I taught, I don't know if it was 2 years that we were there, but I stayed at the Buda the Western Community Unit until Russ moved to Greenfield. And then when we got there, I didn't teach.
Greenfield, I'm thinking Greenville.
Greenfield is near Jacksonville, Illinois,
Okay.
south of there. And then we kind of hopped around after that. I mean, he was head coach there and taught math, and then we went to Palestine? No, that's not right. I'll remember the name of it. It starts with a P. It's a town that was close. We lived in 2 towns there. The towns were Modesto and I can't remember the other one. But anyway, we were there 2 years, and then we went to another. Then in those early years, we moved houses every year. And then we had our first child in Modesto. Jennifer was born. And then we moved to another town in the same district. And that's so. But after that, we went north to more in my area of the world. Because this is down where his parents were. He lived in Carrollton, Illinois, and Greenfield was not very far from there. And we were there for that number of years, and then we went back north to Earlville, and that's where he became principal. Was that first year, and I didn't teach. I had Jennifer, and Kevin was on the way when we moved there. So I stayed home with my children and substituted. I gave piano lessons of all things.
Really? In your home or at church?
In my home when we lived in Greenfield, somebody gave us a grand piano.
Wow.
And it was kind of on a front porch, but it was a room. It had windows, so it would be a sun porch. And I gave lessons there. And it was fine. I didn't want to give piano lessons because they don't practice. Don't practice. And when we went north, I just had too much to do with the kids and the church and getting involved and being part of the community.
Did you keep that piano by any chance?
We moved it from Greenfield to Palmyra. See, I knew that town would come.
Palmyra, okay.
Okay, we lived in Modesto first, and then we moved it to Palmyra. We moved it twice. And when we were going north, he said, "I'm not going to move that piano again." And I said, "Well, then I guess we have to buy a new one." So we did. Because I said, I'm not going to move to a new community with 2 babies and not know anybody and not have a piano. Can't do it. So we have a piano. We still have it to this day.
Good.
And his brother went and bought a piano a month after I did, and Jennifer has that piano.
Wonderful.
He went to the same store, bought the same piano, and she has that one, and I have the one I bought. So
Do you happen to know the brand of it?
it's a Baldwin,
Oh, good.
and mine's an Acrosonic, and
Good company.
they had a little longer sounding board, which I wanted, and then his was just a regular spinet. But it was one of those.
Of course, they're not in business anymore either.
No, it's a good piano.
Oh my, yes. I had a Baldwin Grand.
Yeah, no, this one wasn't a grand. I didn't buy a grand. I just bought I wanted the longer sounding board and the better sound, so they had this thing for a while, which was an Acrosonic, and its sounding board is tilted a little inside,
Right.
so it has more length or something.
Longer
Yeah, it
strings.
has longer strings, and so the top is a little higher, but it's not like
Right.
what were those called? Those
Studios, I think.
Studio, but there's the great big ones. What were they? Like
Well, upright.
the upright. Okay, yeah. We lost one of those off a truck once with that.
That's another story, isn't
Yeah,
it?
well, when I was growing up, we gave it to somebody because we were going to get a different one, and they drove it out of our driveway and it just went
Oh, my
right over
God.
the side.
Bunch of splinters.
But a mess. It was a mess. So anyway, so then after we were in Earlville 4 years, and then he was offered a job in, well, I guess that was Fisher, where we stayed 10 years.
Fisher,
And it's north of Champaign.
huh? Okay.
Good town, good people. It was really hard to leave them because I had good friends, but it was an important move for everybody. And we had interviewed at Robinson the year before we came here. And there was just something about it. Jennifer and I were not sold, but it wasn't our decision. But we told Russ that we weren't comfortable, but it was his decision, what he wanted to do. And at the time, John Pierce had told us that he knew that this job was going to open up, or he was pretty sure it would be opening up in the next year. And it might be just a little enough smaller. And of course, he liked the community. He grew up here. And so he said, why don't you just wait and see what happens? And I think that was, so we did. And then we ended up here.
Had you been to Marshall before at all? Before you settled here, really?
No, I don't ever.
Huh.
Not ever before. We came, we came to visit, of course. And Judy McConkey was on the school board.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a good representative to have.
Sure.
Because she and I have been friends since the day we met.
Good.
So,
When you first came to Marshall, I guess you build up a first image, I guess you'd say, just like when you meet someone as an individual. What was your early or first impressions and your evaluation of Marshall?
it was small town and everybody was friendly. When we move anywhere, like when we went to any town, the church was our second home.
Mm-hmm.
And the school was there, always there for me. Because, I had that connection, but my actual interaction group was the church people. Those were the people that I connected with before I did teachers, people he worked with. I just was, because that's the way my life has always been. You make yourself a part of the church and that's your family. And so in every town we had a church. One town that was a Christian church. And one town we went to a Presbyterian church. And but we had, the church family were the ones that became our friends first. And they were friendly. And here it was the same way. And this church was very open. When we talked about coming here, we talked to John about where we should go and what he thought. And he said, well, because of music, he thought that I would be the happiest at First Church. And he also recommended a bank. And we did that, and we felt that you just make your decision and do that.
It's interesting.
And then, people have asked, Dale Schaefer asked me once, why didn't you shop around? And I said, well, Dale, we didn't really want to make everybody in town mad by going and then deciding to go somewhere else. And I said, because we're new to the community and we do want to fit in. And I said, John recommended the Methodist Church, and I found my niche there, and my friends are there. My closest friends probably are in the church. I have teacher friends and other friends, but the people that I depend on are there.
Did you get involved in music right away at the church?
I started the choir, I think, immediately. Maybe not, and Priscilla was the director at that time. And so I got to know her a little bit. And, that was the only real thing I did that first year. I didn't do anything, else at the church as far as being involved, because I wanted to get my family settled in. But we were in a Sunday school class, and the kids were in Sunday school and MYF, and then probably by that second year we did youth group sponsoring with Angie and Steve Setzer, and enjoyed that a lot.
I think you had mentioned here you had Jennifer and Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
So did you involve them right away in church activities?
Yes, well, yes, that's just what you do. It's the law. And Brian was born in Earlville, and he was involved, through there. He was in 6th grade when we came here. So he was already a part of the church in Fisher. I'm not sure if he joined the church. I think he joined the church here because he was in 6th grade when he came here. So the other two joined when they were in Fisher, and then had to move their membership when they came.
Were you teaching here after you moved here?
When I came here, I didn't do anything until February the first year. And then Project Help was starting up, and I went there as an assistant and was there for 3.5 years. But then I realized that maybe it might be better for me if I tried to get a job in music and work half-time, because I was putting in more hours there than I was making about a half-time teacher's salary, but I was working too many hours that I shouldn't have been. And so I decided that I would look for a music job, and I thought, well, who's going to, hire somebody that's going on 50? And got a job. I interviewed at one job after it was closed and everything, and I got the job at Arthur. And I was there 2 years. And then that job changed to something that I didn't want. And I went to Shiloh, and I was there for the rest of my teaching time.
So what year, I guess, did you quote retire?
2002 was when I gave it up. So it's been a while.
Was there something that you said, I'm going to retire at a particular date? Or was there something that says, it's about time to give it up and hang up things? And
Well, I had health
what
problems.
decided you to retire?
I had health problems with my knees were bad. And my doctor, who's in Muhammad, he really was trying to give me all sorts of advice about how I could teach music and still survive. And they were things like sit on a stool, walk on a rubber mat. And I said, have you ever seen anybody teach music? I said, you're everywhere. And I said, so I can't do that. But I waited till the kids were out of college, and then they were all married. We'd gotten through those steps. And Russ was I think that in the beginning he was gonna retire then also. And then they convinced him to go on another set of years. So I had retirement by myself for a while. And then, but I think we'd kind of aimed for the same year, which I think it worked out for the best, as it was.
Have you ever looked back and said, I wish I had done something else?
No, there are times, I had an opportunity before we came here to teach math, because that was my other love, and I had been taking classes at Parkland College, thinking that I was going to get my junior high certification in math, but then I'd taken some more algebra and one other course, and I got a job in Tolono. Is that the right name? Trying to think where that is. Is
It's
that
up
south
by
of Champaign?
Champaign,
Okay,
yeah.
yes, that's where it was. And there's a lot of all those T words. And they had had an 8th grade principal that had just kind of disappeared. He just left. He didn't come back to work.
Okay.
And so the math teacher went into the administrative position. So I taught math the year before we came here from like right after Thanksgiving till the end of the year, 7th and 8th grade math. And so I had the opportunity to teach it, and when I came here, I thought I'd just go ahead and get that certification and then maybe go back and teach math instead of music. But as it worked out, they were starting all this testing of you had to pass this, and this in order to teach, and I would have had to go through that to get the new certification. And I didn't want my children to see me go absolutely nuts. And when Kevin took his test, he said, "Dad, you would have been fine." He says, "It's mostly math and English." He says, "There's very little
Right up your alley.
social studies." He says, "You would know what they asked." But I just didn't want to. So I was working and trying to get the kids settled, and I had too many things to do. So I gave it up and went back and taught music again. And I came here.
You haven't regretted it or looking back apparently either.
No, it was, the experiences teaching here were really good. I had excellent principals in both places. They were, just really supportive and helpful.
You mentioned driving to Arthur. Now that's a little piece up the road.
Yes, it was. It took me an hour and 15 minutes. And I was only supposed to teach I think it was Tuesday and Thursday and every other Friday or something. I don't know how it worked. But the days I went, I wouldn't get home till 6 o'clock because I had 13 classes in that day. And then had to do lunch duty. And so bulletin boards, any other work that I did there, I had to do after school, so I'd be coming home, rolling in. And it wasn't the ideal job, but it was a good place for me to start. And I got to teach the Amish children, and that was fun. I mean, I enjoyed them a lot.
What grade levels were you teaching there?
K through 6 is what I had there. And they were delightful. I explained the boys as they were ornery. But to compare them to the other boys, they weren't out to get me in any way. They were just ornery. And they could think of the other things, but the kids over here would try to work me. They never did that. They didn't have that in their makeup. They were just having fun. And we did have a good time. I enjoyed them a lot. And then at Shiloh, it was just, I had good kids and I enjoyed teaching. I liked to stay in my own room. And
Were you in the same grade levels there?
there I did K through 6 for a while, and then I included the junior high chorus the last couple of years, which made it another. But I was also then teaching my own product. So as my 6th graders moved into 7th grade, I took on the chorus, and then I did it another year, and then I retired. So.
Did you give any private lessons?
No, I do. The only private work I've done is to help people. I worked with Maddie Webster from the time she was in 8th grade on, and I worked with Jocelyn and Elizabeth Lovestead, just people in the church, and I've never done it for pay since back when I had piano lessons in Greenfield, because I just never felt like that was.
I know you've been deeply involved in music all the way along, and you haven't let that go at the church either. I think you're very involved with the music program.
I'm a choir director and have been since Priscilla retired, and that I don't have no idea. Somewhere around 2000 is when I started. When Reverend Davis was still here.
Oh, yeah.
When I started. And I enjoy my choir. We have an amazing group of people in it. They're hard workers and they're very easy to be with. And they sound good. I think they sound good, that's what it's, they do a good job.
It seemed like whether it's a choir, a band, or anything else organization-wise, so many times people do not want to make a commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably true even in your choir too, but it has to be something that really keeps them alive and interested.
Well, and the commitment that they have, most of the choir members, a lot of the choir members, have been choir members forever.
Okay.
And I think I could be Mickey Mouse up there directing and they'd still be in the choir. But they're just Steve Arney has been there forever.
Yeah.
And, there's just been a lot of people. And Priscilla's back, she is singing with us.
Really?
And she did for a while and then she didn't. And then when Bill was sick, she didn't sing. But she's come back and she's full-time. But they're just a committed group of people. And I understand why the younger people don't want to get that committed. Because it's Wednesday and Sunday and people go away, but we've never been down. We don't get down under 20 very often. We usually have 20 voices up there doing something. And the joy comes when Jocelyn and Elizabeth joined choir this year. And because they're in high school, Jocelyn Green and Elizabeth Lofstead.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the grandchildren of people in our church and people I've worked with over the years. And when I went and asked them, I said, since you're both in high school now, would you like to come and join us? And they said, we were talking about that the other day. We want to know when we're old enough to sing in choir. So they want to be in, and that's refreshing.
Sure is.
Because that's the youth coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I also once a month go in and work with the children's church and we do music. And then I take them in to sing with the choir.
Great.
And that's a fun thing to do because it gives those kids.
Do you ever play the piano for the choir?
I don't play the piano. I do in practice. I don't like to play. I've never had to because Ann's been there to do a lot of it and she's still playing. And Jo Sanders, I didn't realize this, that she really wasn't a pianist.
Mm-hmm.
She's an organist. But she has grown and she is probably I don't know if this is safe to say, she's the main pianist now. I mean, she plays most of the anthems with us. And Ann plays one she knows. She doesn't play as much as she used to.
Right.
Because her health is not as good as she wants it to be, and she isn't able to make all the rehearsals, and so she's not doing as much. But she is a very, very good musician. Ann is. And so is Jo, but they would be polar opposites is the way they approach their talent. But I enjoy working with both of them, but you get in the middle sometimes. You've ever been
there, done that.
Been there, so.
Paula, is there some event or historical thing in the past that you really feel has influenced your thinking or your lifetime?
I remember the 3 historical events that made a difference in, like, every time I return to certain places, I think of that. One was the walk on the moon and where I was and what I was doing, because I was working for Stuckey's and I was driving to Wisconsin, to New Lisbon, and when they were doing that talk, and I was going up there to train a new manager. And then I know where I was when JFK was shot.
Mm-hmm.
I could even know what part of the campus I was on when I heard it. And it was raining and very dreary. And then 9/11, I remember that morning at school. And I was one that I didn't know it before 11 o'clock, before noon. And that morning I went in, I had my plans in front of me, but I'd been in my room like since 6:30 and just getting things ready and planning. And then when the kids came in, there was just something about their demeanor. They didn't say a word about it. And I just thought, yeah, we're just going to go off today, and we're just going to sing patriotic songs today.
Oh, man.
And that's what we did, and I thought somebody was watching out for me because I had no clue what had gone on. And then when I went out to get coffee or whatever, when I was done at 11:30, everybody was kind of dragging around the school. I'm like, what's going on?
Did the students, you think, know that?
Oh, I think they knew it, but
Hello?
they just didn't. They just they didn't bring it up.
Just in like a fog, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like maybe they thought I knew, and that's why we were doing that. I have no clue. But I always feel like I have somebody on my shoulder watching what I'm doing, and I guess that morning I was lucky that. And I suppose you're not supposed to go off of your lesson plans, but I probably did that more often than not.
With your retirement now, I think you've done a little traveling too, haven't you?
Yes, we've gone mainly to the mountains, and it was I enjoy going west, and I like mountains and streams and water, and I'm not a museum person. I like to, and I may have become not a museum person because Russ does not enjoy that. He likes to sit in a chair by a stream. We get down to the water, we walk near the water, we don't fish, no fishing. Just the peaceful and the grandeur of the mountains. Mm-hmm. And it just puts you in a different place than Illinois can put you.
We just got back Friday from 5,000-mile trip out west.
Oh my gosh.
Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and spent a week up at Glacier National Park.
Mm-hmm. We've been there, and it was one of my favorites. Magnificent place. We really liked that.
So I appreciate what you're saying about the tranquility and the relaxation of mountains.
And we do. I like to relax when I'm on a vacation. From the time I get up in the morning here, sometimes I'm not doing things, but if I'm in my house or at the church, there's always all those things I should be doing. And
it becomes just like a program, and you
right,
feel like
and I just need to, and I will never run out of things to do. The word being bored, I may not want to do what I have to do, and that might be a kind of boredom. But as far as not having anything to do, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself today. I don't think that'll ever happen.
And I think music helps keep that alive too.
Yes, I would not be. The choir is my inspiration. I go into choir practice, and I've been in all this hubbub and all what I'm doing during the day all week, but when I come out of there, there's something different.
Don't you think it's a sense of accomplishment?
Yes, but to give them that opportunity to come together and sing. Linda James was talking today about when sometimes she starts a piece and she thinks it's just awful. And she says, and then all of a sudden it just starts to come together, and she says, how does that happen? And I said, I think that's what I'm for, is to, and I said, I have to approach it because we do a lot of rote learning where, the parts are played and they go over them and over them. Once we learn something, then when we go back, it isn't that kind of chore. We just have to brush up. But it's just it's very rewarding to see the people singing and sounding like a unit and working together.
Well, I know and appreciated one time you helped us out with some music, and it was a very pleasant experience.
And that was when Father Jeff was here, and he was a very easy person to work with.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was one of your stars as far as priests were concerned.
We have all of these wonderful things around us and modern conveniences. Paula, is there something that you say, gosh, I just could not live without that?
Actually, at this point, if I were going to say, I'd have to say my cell phone. And I know this is something that is really silly, because anything else, I can do it another way. But to keep in contact with my family and to keep in touch with my boys on a semi-daily basis, it's a way I can do that without being intrusive on what they need to be doing. My daughter's in Minnesota, and to know what they're doing, I have a little routine, and if I sense something is the matter, then I can either make some comment about set a time when we can talk, or you call me when you can. So right now in my life, the position we're in, I think I could not live without that feature, because I need it.
Do you feel, though, a little bit that maybe that thing has taken over our life and made us and more impersonal? Because I see people going down the street texting. I see people walking with their cell phone. They don't even know if they're in the street or on the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. People have gotten out of the touch of communications.
Well,
at least face-to-face communications.
Yeah, and we haven't done that. I mean,
no, but I'm saying a lot of people.
A lot of people have, and I think I can see that, and I can see that in the children and in the younger people. But I like face-to-face visiting. Mm-hmm. I keep the post office in business because I do a lot of notes to people. That's something that I love to do, and I just thought anybody could do that. Well, I've been told that it's not easy for some people to just sit down and write a note, but it doesn't bother me. So, but I do think it's made it less personal, but when I'm just keeping in communication with my just immediate family, I'm anxious for the time. I don't want them to have cell phones now, but I'm anxious for the time when Julia can just text me and say, I need to talk to you. That's one of my granddaughters. Because she does have a lot of times when she thinks that. But at night she doesn't carry it out, but she would, and then I could just call and say, so what do you need? Mm-hmm. And talk to her.
Well, as a retired teacher, if you were to go back to teaching today, do you think you'd want to?
If my physical body were in the shape that I could do it the way I want to do it. I mean, if I could get down on my knees, if I could sit down on the floor, if I could yes, I would want to go back. Because that's a gift I have, to be able to reach children with music.
With all of the changes that's taken place in government requirements and all of these things, and maybe even the attitude of children toward discipline, don't you think education has really changed a great deal, though, in the last few years?
It has. I think it's difficult to keep yourself focused on the child. I think keep your focus away from the testing, mm-hmm. and still focus and take the child where they are and work with them at that point and go on. And as far as the discipline's concerned, I don't ever feel I would have a problem because I am kind of a child myself as far as having fun, kidding around, knowing when it's time to get up and run around the room, change the subject. The main part of teaching that I was really glad to get away from was the mandates from the state. The requirements that we have to fulfill. I hate to say it, but it was hard to work with some of the teachers, partially because the stories were sometimes quite degrading to my students, their students, saying, well, they could never do that. And I didn't do that. I didn't go in there. You kind of gravitate to be friends with the teachers, the kind of teachers that think like you do. Mm-hmm. And I had there were some very, very good ones. And the teachers that were degrading people might have been very good ones too, but I couldn't get past that, talking about students as if they would never have a chance. I've been kind of the underdog champion for a long, long time.
With the changes of so much use of the computer, now I know music and your teaching that you did was probably not too much computer oriented, but did that have some influence also on your programs?
I don't know that it, as far as what I was doing, it didn't really change things much. Some of the, there's a lot of electronic things and that, we didn't have a bass guitar in our band. Where, my grandson's playing the bass guitar in the band. And, but that's not a computer thing. But I'm sure there will be a lot of things that will change down the road. But there's still going to be that basic learning of how to use an instrument.
And use your brain too.
And use your brain and to do the things, manually that you wouldn't otherwise. So.
Well, if you were traveling and maybe when you were in Alaska or if you went to another country or something and you said, I'm from Marshall, Illinois, they'd say, what? Where is that? What's that all about? What would you tell them a little bit about Marshall and why they might even want to visit here?
Marshall is a town that doesn't want to fall behind. They're a town that takes care of their own people. And I learned that through our bridge program. That they want to take care of the people in their town. They don't want to look. Marshall people are very interested in the appearance of the city. And that is a good thing, not in a bad way. They want to look good. They want their town to be one that people will remember. And I think there's a lot of people that work toward that goal. We have a lot of history here, and I've been a friend of Elder Mackey, and she talks about the history, and I think that's wonderful. That's not my main interest, but I am interested in it. I like the fact that we have our band concerts. I don't always go. I may stay home and watch a ball game instead of going, but that's just part of it. But Marshall's a good town. They have a good education system, and I think we were privileged to be a part of that. I think Russ being here his amount of years, and he was forward-looking. And I think then Kevin he has the same name, but he is more into looking forward. And I was very not surprised, that he got some kind of an award for the work program and for his innovative ideas in making that program work, because we are basically an academic family. I mean, we are basically college-oriented. This is where you should go. This is what you should do. And that's what I've heard in my life. That's what he heard. It wasn't ever, do you want to go? It was, you need to go for your own benefit. It's a tool to get your life to go on. And that's what I think. We have progressive thinking in our schools now, someone who's a strategist, and I think we have good schools. And it's going to be difficult to keep them, because there's no reason for anybody in the state of Illinois to want to go into teaching, except if they have this burning desire to teach something.
Paula, your husband had a wonderful track record of education and bringing the school system along. When your son started thinking about taking that job, did you ever say, oh my gosh, do you really want to get into that? Or should you? Or would you? Well, how about doing that someplace else? Or, I mean, just the attitude of your feeling of him coming in to try to fill his father's gap.
Well, I wasn't surprised, because
Okay.
I know how much Allison wanted to come to this town. And I didn't think that was, when it opened, And I knew that that was a possibility. And he did call me and ask me, he says, "What do you think?" And I said, "I thought I was done with that, but I can be that person again." And it has become that, but, because I am related to him. And probably a closer relationship because it's a blood relationship. and I know him quite well.
Sure.
But I think that I didn't jump up and down and dance in circles. I mean, that's, I was glad I liked him being in Shelbyville because he was very close, and that was a good town, and that was just nice. But I knew he wasn't going to stay there forever because he was going to move to something. He was going to go to a full superintendency, either there, and it just worked out that he chose to do this, and I think he felt the same way I did. It was something that was wanted in the family, and so he applied and was lucky enough to get the job here.
We're delighted to have him in that position, and I think things are moving along very well, especially with, as you say, with all the budget problems and everything in Springfield and what happens there. We've got to look after our own community, and he's certainly doing that.
I think he is. I think he's doing a decent job. And it's, all the other stuff that goes with it, and I know what it is. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I have to watch him go through the things that I knew would be there. And if he was in another town, I wouldn't know who was.
That's kind of what I was wanting to find out,
just,
what your opinion was of that.
It wasn't that I didn't want him to come here and I didn't want them to be close. It was just that there's baggage. I mean, Russ was here, and I know that everybody didn't think he did a perfect job at everything. I'm here, and I'm not exactly in a non-leadership position. And David Lewis was state's attorney. And so you get everybody's that's not baggage, it's just you have to take on the persona that people think you are. Many people think Kevin is the person that just, his main accomplishment in life was to break the rim of the basketball in Casey. Well, that isn't the best thing he's ever done in his life. And he's kind of moved on to, he loves basketball, he loves sports, he loves all sorts of things, but that's not who he is now.
And people always have some wild expectations.
Yes,
that's true too. Well, Paula, it's been a delight visiting with you. I've really enjoyed it. Known you for several years, but this has been a real fun thing to do. And I appreciate you taking the time out to sit down for our oral history, because this is not for today, tomorrow, but it goes on record and will be for future people to look at and say, gee, I didn't know that about Paula.
Yeah, Russ said, when I said I wasn't coming, he said, well, what if Julia and all the 9 grandchildren would like to listen to that?
Exactly.
And I said, okay.
Well, thanks again. I really appreciate it. It's been very, very,
You're welcome.
very productive.
I've enjoyed talking.